Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and today we have our debate. Debate is already very popular in Asia Pacific, and with our speakers, maybe we will join in the future in the uh, real parliament. So today's our topic is this house believe that robots are coming for our job. So we have our Prime Minister for today's Parliament, Professor Rob. We have our opposition leaders, Professor David Smith. Uh, we have our ministers from the governments, Professor Donalds, opposition deputy leaders, Mr. Tom Rose. From the governments, we have government's member of the parliament, Mr. Javiers, as well as from the opposition, we have our very strong voice, Mr. Marshall. So you know that we are actually advocating for AI and robotics real life. In the real life, we are collaborating with developing countries like Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Nepal. We are working with many largest NGO corporations, Singapore governments, as well as Singapore largest NGO. They already committed that they will collaborate with World Talent Economic Forum for solving these uh, human trafficking issues. And definitely, we have a lot more debate on that issues. So I directly want to go to for these debatings. Before that, I just want to share that this is mock parliament, but I'm sure our debaters, from my experience, our debaters is very smart, and how they handled previous debate, it's actually very, very popular for the youth communities. And especially we want this kind of highly analytical politicians in the parliament, because if we have a logical politician in the parliament, in any country, they can contribute more, and then our world will be more safer and more stronger. And definitely, World Talent Economy Forum, we focus on humanity, we focus on developing human resources. So any kind of war or anything, we are against it. So we are developing our uh, uh, like global peace forum. So hopefully all of our speakers and the advisors and the fellow, they will support our initiative. Now I request uh, uh, our honorable Prime Ministers, Professor Rob, uh, for bring his issues and go for discussion.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me. This House believes that robots are coming for our jobs, and there is actually no contrary argument to this that's broadly held. The World Economic Forum indicates that about 35% of the jobs worldwide will be replaced by automation. Carl Frey and Michael Osborne write, and they predict 47% of the U.S. jobs will be automated within the next 20 years. And let's be clear that there's nobody that argues that we're not going to go through a massive amount of disruption as robotics and automation come into the market. What we come down to is, will the pattern follow prior patterns where when automation came in, the jobs moved up into other more lucrative areas? I will point out, after reviewing that, much of that is at least somewhat flawed, because not everybody that was displaced suddenly became a much more profitable worker. An awful lot of the jobs that happened in prior industrial revolutions, they were not only lost, but the workers that did them were lost because they couldn't be retrained. And in almost every other cycle, once the cycle began, was when the world started to do retraining and repositioning of those workers. And I don't believe we can afford to wait that long this time. The big difference this time with regard to automation is these machines are increasingly intelligent. Where before, most of the equipment were force multipliers. They would allow a worker to do more than they were able to do with just manual labor. It made them more efficient. It didn't necessarily wipe them out. It just allowed them to do more with less, and the end result was a benefit. But even so, there were socioeconomic disruptions as we moved workers from one category to another, and industries moved from one area to another. For instance, when we stopped using water power to power factories, and we moved to electricity, that allowed those factories to move, and not everybody could move with the factories, and that was disruptive, and it was largely unplanned. Large areas of our country and other countries became non-viable because the factories and industries that had been supporting those environments moved to other locations, and the locations that had hosted those factories in the past became ghost towns. And that could have been mitigated had we saw ahead that this was going to happen and thought about what other kinds of industries and programs could move into those areas, so we didn't disrupt the existing ecosystem. So, excuse me. So the World Economic Forum also predicts that 58 million jobs worldwide, and there will be a need for high-skilled workers. But if you look at where a lot of this automation is occurring, it's actually occurring in the high-skilled worker areas. We have computers that are now coding, and they're turning out higher quality code than humans can turn out. So taking a manufacturing worker and turning them into a coder won't work because coding jobs are going to go away. Human resources. If we look at human resources jobs and handling people, that capability has been largely a compliance function for the last couple decades, and it's going to need to change rather dramatically into becoming an outplacement and training function if we are decide to survive this coming change. And as I mentioned, that the automation in the past predominantly hit, and we thought that was going to happen here as well, the low-paying, redundant jobs that were in place, and that is true in the past. But as I mentioned, in this particular iteration, it's not just the low-paid, redundant jobs that are being hit. It's all across the ecosystem. With autonomous driving, we're talking about taking out truckers, first long-haul truckers, and then delivery. We're talking about, with regard to drones, talking about drone delivery, replacing delivery people. If in farming, we're talking about automated tractors, replacing not only the field farmers, but people that are operating the tractors that we have today. That's a lot of people that are suddenly not going to have a career path. And so what I'm proposing, what the government is proposing, is first we need to do a study in country and decide what jobs are most at risk, and then determine from that study how we would take those people and put them in other jobs and what jobs would be best for them. Number two, we need to model where those future jobs are going to be. Right now, there is only one Silicon Valley, and it's not here. So if all of our jobs go over into high technical jobs, and those industries exist in Germany, and they exist in China, and they exist in the United States, then those workers, those new jobs that are coming up, are going to exist in China, the United States, and Germany. They're not going to exist here. So we need to understand what we need to do to incentivize the industries that will have those new jobs to be in country. Otherwise, even if we do retraining, we'll simply be retraining workers to work in other countries, and our economy will falter. And finally, we need to develop and fund not only training programs, but outplacement programs. When we retrain these people, we need to make sure we can put them someplace. Retraining a bunch of people and have them remain in country and employed doesn't solve the problem at all. So the government believes that robots are coming for our jobs. The government also believes there's a fix to the underlying problem, and that fix is identifying the jobs at risk, identifying where those industries will be, and putting in place funding programs to assure those industries, those training programs, and those workers have a viable future, not only today, but into tomorrow, and that we have a plan for when these jobs are displaced. While everyone is talking about this massive influx of robotics and job replacement, virtually nobody is talking about how we mitigate that problem. They're just assuming it's going to happen like it did before, and every indication right now is that it will not. This is a different level of automation. It's happening across all hierarchies of workers, not just low-level manufacturing. And if we don't figure out what we're going to do with those people that we're going to be laying off before they're laid off, we're going to have serious problems.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister of this Parliament, for your excellent speech. We need this kind of speech in the Parliament, this kind of politician in the real parliaments. So hopefully our youth communities can learn from today's session, then they can contribute in policy development and in real Parliament. Professor David Smith, I want to request you as an opposition leader of this Parliament.
Well, thank you so much for letting the opposition to the government address this very important topic. The premise of this is that the robots are coming to take all of our jobs away from us. And the fact is that within our country today, we are on the second tier of automation. And you're seeing it more in places as the majority leader referenced in Silicon Valley and other places like that. But the majority leader made some great points. One of the strengths of our nation is that we have an excellent education system that can be used as we put our things in place. And the proposition that robots are coming to take our jobs kind of goes back to the promise of why did we want to quit using horses as we did our agriculture? Is we wanted to go ahead and go to tractors and other devices like that to make ourselves more efficient. And what happened is people were trained and they learned how to drive tractors. And, we now have tractors here with GPS systems in them that help us farm more capable. Well, we're beginning to see automation put in tractors too. And what's that's doing? It's freeing up the time for our farmers to better plan for how to grow their crops, to be able to market their crops better and spend the time doing the manual tasks like that. We see it, as the majority leader said, in all walks of it. We're seeing places where our lawyers are being able to be more effective because of the machine learning of some of the automation parts there. While it's not a robot, it is an automated process that can be there. And what's happening? Lawyers are learning new skills, they're learning to work in other places like that. So it is something that will affect us. But we know from looking back at our history that we've lived in a time of change. And over the last 30 years, we've been living in a time of accelerated change. And that's one of the key benefits, as we see here, how we've encouraged our education system to be able to prepare people for these changing environments. If I go back 40 years ago, we were isolated from other parts of the world. We often didn't know what was happening until the next day or so as the news cycle caught up. But we saw advances in technology begin to turn it where we know what's happening around the rest of the world. Oh, but we also can take advantage of the what's happening in the rest of the world to advance our skills, our capabilities, our competencies. And is we listen. One of the things that we do very well on the opposition side is we listen to our constituents back out in the countryside. And there's many questions about that. Is how will robots affect us in the future? What jobs will be replaced by robots? And in many instances within our country today, robots are being used where they're uh, tasks that get repeated time and time again. Are there tasks where we're going into locations where the risk of injury is high? No, we're using them in places where we cannot go. Some of the drone technologies giving us new views to enhance it and let the things that we as humans do well, the reasoning, the complex problem solving being used very effectively. I love a quote that came out of the United States, out of one of the research institutions there, Wharton. And they said that oftentimes when they've been in discussions with governments about whether robots are coming to take your job, their question coming back is, do you think that the robot will come and knock on your door at your house and pull you out of the house and say you no longer have a job? No, that's not happening. Even introducing robots within companies is a process that takes time. And the same people who they are replacing are the ones who have to help teach it what to do. And then they become more of a supervisor. There's many new technical skills. There's many new logistic skills and things that are placed as we begin to see the enhancements of technology used to make the workplace better. You know, are robots in the workplace a threat or an opportunity? And the reality is it's both. It's a threat to those who do not want to adapt to the new times and continue to grow. But it's also a great opportunity to see how you can take people and enhance their skills and move them forward, which is what our great education systems we have installed in this country are about. The areas where robots are today will continue to grow as robots become smarter, as technology becomes more apparent. How many of the using the government's approach, maybe we should not have deployed smartphones, because smartphones can do a lot of things too that were done by others in the past or by multiple devices. And, should we take those apart? You know, should we go ahead and go to electric vehicles versus the others? Because that's going to change how people's jobs are affected and things. No, we have traditionally looked at smart ways to adapt to technology, to use technology. And on the opposition party, we actually really trust the wisdom and the knowledge of our constituencies in this country, that they understand that the world is a dynamic environment and is changing. In this growth of technology, which our country has embraced, actively embraced and used to help the citizens of this country to expand our industrial base, our science base, our academic base. We've created new companies in our great nation based on advances in technology. And yet this is just another advancement in technology that we're going to work with. And the opposition does agree with the majority party. More education is necessary. But it's not just more education, because what the majority did is they outlined band-aid steps to it. What is really necessary is for us to work as our great nation to install the spirit of lifelong learning into our citizens. For this legislature to understand the concept that it is really the cultural change to embrace the advances in technology, the advances for lifelong learning that will have the most impact and will make us become a leader in our nation in the global environment of being a role model of how to advance and use technology to benefit not only each other, our nation, but the global world as a whole. So that is from the opposition side, and we welcome the debate. It's an important one for our nation, and one which, there's pluses and minuses on both sides, but I believe that our parties working together can still be a technology leader and make it available for all of our citizens. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor David Smith, for your excellent speech. Now I request Minister of the Parliament from the government side, Professor Donald.
Well, everybody's been making excellent points, and I want to put a frame around this and talk a little bit about the short term versus the long term. I think in the long term, people will have new jobs, whatever winds up happening. There might be some future that's ideal future where no one has to work because robots all take care of us and we're kind to each other and share everything. And just like in Star Trek or the science fiction books, but that's going to be a long way in the future. And I think if we look at the history of jumps in technology, they come at a price. And we can look at every industrial revolution, from the switch from agriculture to urban, from the switch from to starting to use machines to do manufacturing. At every jump in history, there's been incredible problems. There's been wars. There's been complete dislocation of people. If at one time we could look, one of the things that's useful to do is to look at the more advanced countries, because as the science fiction writer William Gibson said, and I think it was a good point, is he said, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And so where we're going to go is already here somewhere. And if we look around, we can start to see it. And I'm going to use the example of agriculture. The United States is probably, it's one of the more advanced countries. And at 1900, 85% of the people in the United States were involved in agriculture. And in 2000, it was down to 7%. So somehow all those people that were working on farms and so on wound up getting new jobs during that period of time. But we had World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War. There were so many incredible. We had huge riots in the cities that burned down cities. We had all kinds of stuff that wound up happening during that period of time, which we can't directly attribute to technology change. But if we look at, when a bunch of people lose their jobs, don't have anything to do, move to cities hoping to get new jobs, there was incredible migrations that took place of people moving from the south to the north, looking for jobs and winding up in some cases into basically ghettos of various sorts, not just with African Americans, but other Polish ghettos and other things like that. So when I think it's going to be a little longer. I think what Rob said is incredibly important about being able to study which jobs are actually going to be impacted, because it's really easy to imagine that positronic brains are going to be invented sometime in the next couple of years. But positronic brains are actually a science fiction concept that was a science fiction writer Isaac Asimov came up with. It got so popular that Data has a positronic brain. I mean, but no one knows how to make a positronic brain. Asimov just called it that because they just discovered positrons, and he thought the name sounded really cool. And it's not robots. Robots are taking away like a little bit of jobs at a time. But what Rob said, so maybe sometime in the far, far future, the jobs will be replaced. But as I said, getting from here to there, like right now in the United States, part of what their problem is if you look at it, is that there's a lot of people who were in one social class who had jobs that provided them with security. They didn't have to get particularly good education to do it in manufacturing. And because of a variety of things, and one of them is automation, those people just don't have those secure jobs anymore. And it reflects on who they are as their identity. So they're getting very, very upset, and they're actually even attacking the country itself. So we need to realize that they may not be able to come for all of our jobs, because even if computers can do coding, they don't have any motive to do it. Like why would a computer just turn itself on and start coding something? It doesn't make any sense. So somebody's going to have to write the programs that do the coding. So there will be jobs. It's just that they're changing, and so they're coming for the jobs we have many of the jobs we have right now. And it's important for us to identify the jobs that are being taken, and we can look at more developed countries like the United States and EU and other places where that's already starting to happen. And then after we've identified the jobs that were there, it's not just a matter of education. It's a matter of also looking at the people and figuring out who they are, what their identity is, and how they see themselves as people, to be able to address the changes. Because people don't necessarily want to go out and learn stuff. I mean, go back to school and things like that. We have to look at ways that have been successful. In Finland, they're much more successful at it than they are in the United States. So they are taking our jobs. They already are. They have been, and it's just going to accelerate. And so what we need to do is, based on that, identify what the issues, where the jobs are being taken, and start moving the people in the new jobs that are going to be created by the change.
Thank you, Mr. Donalds. Now I request deputy leaders from the oppositions, Mr. Tom Rose. He has real-time projects with US6, and yes, for this Asia Pacific, solving these issues what we are discussing right now, he may lead in the futures for our projects, as well as we need more talented people like him who can join in Asia Pacific. So now I request Mr. Tom Rose.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Yes, robots are stealing our jobs. And yes, we should give them our jobs. That's my contention. And because, we are in and will continue to be in a lacuna, a period of time with a lot of displacement, a lot of disruption. There will be pain. There will be injustice. There will be people that are, cast aside, but because there's always going to be that kind of pain and that kind of, seriousness with an advent as big as this is. But the reason I say we need to give them our jobs is because with all this disruption and displacement requires another D. It's our discipline. The onus is on us now. We have created the last tool we'll ever need, right? And it can take over all of our menial tasks, all of our repetitive things, even some of our creative work. And as a creative person, I know that can even get monotonous sometimes. And we're finding people are picketing, and truckers are right now, well, it's a different issue, but they'll probably rally around this issue soon with automated trucking. The onus is on us to create a whole new economy based on the human skill sets that cannot be coded or automated yet, or maybe never really need to be. We've forgotten what it's like to be human. We've become so mechanized by the industrial revolution that, again, we're picketing, we're fighting to have our place on that assembly line still. Because we've been mechanized. We've forgotten what it means to be human. We've forgotten about this computer we have, this supercomputer we have in our skulls. It's been narrow AI'd, through these industrial revolutions, and we have so much more capability. And so, one good example I use to deal with the displacement, one of the biggest displacements that will happen in this country is truckers. And very soon, and that's really the one of the largest jobs in every state except for two that I know of, Colorado and Washington, which are mostly software, but it's really the largest employer, truckers, nationally. And so this is going to be a major displacement. But here's the thing: there is a way where, Donald's absolutely right. People don't like to learn. I don't like to learn new things necessarily. At a certain age, you get kind of set. You don't want to really learn anything. You just want to keep things the way they are. And I understand that. But if, like when you retire, you find out what your passion is and you're able to do your passion, that's what AI is allowing us to do, and robotics will be allowing us to do, to really pursue our passion. So say this trucker, there's still going to need to be a human being riding shotgun, right? Who will be either monitoring whatever needs to be taken care of on the human level. That the truck will just be driving and doing other logistics, right? So he still needs that shepherd. He still needs somebody riding shotgun. And while that trucker is riding shotgun and taking care of all the stuff that doesn't require his full attention in driving, he can take out his laptop or his phone, get on Etsy, get on YouTube, and pursue his passion. We have so many platforms now for people to really pursue and monetize what they're into. And there's ways to figure out what that is. That's what my whole open source mode process is working with people in this situation right before a big AI system is installed or some automation system is installed, because employees will work against these things. They feel threatened by them. But there's a way to make them excited about these things, because there's a whole process you can go through to identify people's passions, to get them into their expert frame of mind, and to really feel augmented by an AI or robotic system. Now, that's probably not the vast majority of people. That a lot of people will not be included in that process. And so again, there will be pain, there will be injustice, and there will be people that are shelved for no good reason. But that's the cost of doing business. And that's what we do. That's what we adapt. And what we all also are is our technology. Without technology, even clothing, we wouldn't last a couple of generations. So I think the onus is on us. There's displacement, there's disruption, but now we need discipline. We need to really hone in on the things that we do best, that we can really have time to do now. We have art, imagination, ingenuity. There's so many possibilities that every human being has that can now be explored, now that we don't have to go punch a time card and stand on an assembly line. Some people like that. I mean, I love routine. I actually enjoy that kind of lifestyle. But that's just the comfort zone, really. It's time for us to have some discipline, to step out of our comfort zone, find out what it is we're really here to do. What's our real core passion? What is our intrinsic talent? You know, I believe we all come in with some very specific ability, and now we have the ability through AI and automation to pursue those things. And so again, disruption, displacement, discipline. The onus is on us to create a whole new economy based on these human traits that can't be coded or automated. And so that's what I have to say about that. Yeah. And so that's it. And also,
Thank you.
Sorry, there's some disruption and displacement.
Sorry. No.
So I have the discipline to tell you. I think one thing we're forgetting to do is we can also ask AI at some point where humans can do their best work. I mean, we're talking about a 5,000 IQ system on the way, you know, and we can actually, it's like bringing Einstein into the room and not asking him about anything. You know, we have an AI that can run models for us, that can figure out the best way to use human beings, you know, if we're careful about that. So anyway, that's where I stand. I think, yes, they're stealing our jobs. There's no way to stop it. It's happening. It's what we do. It's what we've always done. But this time it's different. This time there's going to be pain, but it's not about growing out. It's about growing in. We can remember, again, what it's like to be human. What were we doing before the industry kicked in? What kind of qualities were we working on? Intuition and just all of the qualia that our brains have, and the capacity we have can now really be explored. But we need to get out of our comfort zone. We need to find our passions and figure out how to monetize them. And there's ways to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Tom, for your excellent speech. Now I request from the government side, member of the parliament from the government, Mr. Javier.
Hi, how are you? My name is Javier Furones, and we work from Europe to create a workforce AI with digital humans. This avatar, for example, is a simple example of how in a short time, I, as a speaker, could be replaced by conversational and artificial intelligence and avatars. Even technology has many problems in an increasing valley feeling, but we will get over this in just 5 years, and the human being will not know how to differentiate anything. I could be on the beach, and my speaker avatar will give lecture all over the world. So I'm not bad. This is a process for the future that we are smart. The question of whether robotic will replace human being is an obvious one. At the first level, companies are becoming automation, both for the point of the view of automation and from the point of the view of collaboration between artificial intelligence and humans. For example, my company worked with digital humans that are 3D avatars with conversational artificial intelligence. In a way, is another way of automatic process with respect to the robotic. Not only robots will replace humans, but especially avatars for me is the most important way, and we are investing about that. But not only in aspect of work, also in emotion, in sex, talking care to elderly people, assisting in sick, hospitals. The future is incredible. And in this point of view, the performance of artificial intelligence is a process without going back. Humanity has to understand what is a role in Industry 5.0. What is a role is a new form of artificial intelligence collaboration. As I will say, we are the last generation that doesn't collaborate with artificial intelligence. The idea is that the workforce, i.e., digital humans and robots, in 35/7 moment system and overview humans' functionalities. And this is a problem for humanity that sleep, that has failed, whatever. Against this, there are two options. That humans start thinking about ideas and jobs of the future. For me, is the most important question: how educate for the future of humanity that collaborate with robots and artificial intelligence. The question is wherever work and the suspicion of the human can be compensated with another social alternative, so that compensate the social money funds. It's a great challenge to understand how society is going to adapt to the loss of jobs and substitutions with artificial intelligence. One of the questions that we are asking ourselves is what the future can be where politicians themselves are replaced by artificial intelligence, for example. Sorry about robots and avatars, but truly democratic self-management and management by citizens. In the case of currency, politics, and geopolitics, it makes the most visionary look. Without artificial intelligence, it could be a more intelligent management of an economic research and politics. The question is how we manage the Industry 5.0, and we train a new humanity that needs education format based in basic skill and oscillations. A new economic model needs a quick activation. We must not underestimate the way of understand the world of the younger Gen Z, their vision of a gamification. Today is a day and it's already possible to earn money in the metaverse. In money in NFT, combine economies with more international vision. Companies can no longer be contained by the physical space. It's physical reality now. Physical reality. Physical much physical. Talent is international. For example, in my company, I have developed for all over the world. Local sentiment is that the companies of the future are going to be happening in the metaverse. For me, the world of human education is very important, and we're way behind. Governments should understand that the old education format no longer prepare humanity for what it can. As a partner, Chris say, each generation is going to travel to Mars. And where the big difference is that there are countries like Spain or many Europeans that are losing the space in the future of technology, their possibilities, and young people look to the technological future. The question is the education here, for example, is terrible, and we'll always repeat the same of the past. When for me, the most important is how the new generation of people is education for that future economy and the rest. No, here it's a big problem. I suppose in the rest of the world as well, in Latin, of course. But the question is where to be prepared for that kind of education that allow to collaborate with robotic and artificial intelligence. It's no danger of robotic and artificial intelligence, but how to teach humans to embark on the future of humanity. For me, it's a problem to see how the years go by an educational system. No, even the government themselves embrace this new moment of humanity. Governments should have a roadmap to the future and not life for crisis to crisis. For me, the problem is to see how the years go by an education. Basically, the problem is the first jobs that the artificial intelligence and robots are going to occupy is the basic accommodations, but soon it will cover all levels, including political and education management. The challenge is to see how to collaborate with that future and not be afraid.
Thank you, Mr. Javier. Mr.
Thank
Javier,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I request from the opposition side, opposition member of the parliament, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you, Sharif, and Honorable Prime Minister and members of the government. And I think my colleagues and I, our vaunted leader, David Smith, and my colleague, Tom Ross, are definitely seeing something that's a phenomena, and I think why we will be the next government in the upcoming elections. What we're looking at is a series of quite ironic disparity amongst the government. First of all, we are not the United States. We are a different government. We're a smaller government. It's true, we don't have Silicon Valley, but we do have some highly educated people in our community. And it is also true that our form of government, and I think what we'll do, and I think the people will vote for us, is that we're looking for something much bigger than the question of will robots take our jobs. Many of the systems in place today can be seen as a microcosm of our larger world. Therefore, they're impacted by the same social issues people have had to deal with in their daily lives, such as poverty, gender inequality, racial disparities, just to name a few. Those are the issues that I think our constituents are more concerned about. And yes, they do care about jobs, and the jobs are important. Will robots take our jobs? I think that's a false premise by the government, and it's a scare tactic. And how do we know this? Well, first of all, as everyone who's seen our government, our issues for the government and our constituents know, is that we have a process known as circular economy that Europe has now adopted, and it'll create more jobs, and it won't make necessarily robots taking our jobs. It'll just create better jobs and quality jobs. And it's part of the 17 sustainability development goals that the UN has pro-offered to governments around the world. And we are suggesting that our government adopt those 17 SDGs and that we go towards a circular economy. What will that do? How will that prevent robots from taking our jobs? It's very clear. It's already happening. We know that we have waste in our cities. We have waste all around. What are we doing it? We're putting it into landfills. Is the government controlling it? No, it's toxifying our aquifers. It's polluting our air. We're getting GHG emissions. We have the opportunity to take waste and convert it into products. And I'm not talking about shoes, spoons, and dresses, or even EV cars. I'm talking about the ability to create quality jobs immediately. And even though robots will be involved, and they're not really robots, it's the AI that the member of the government talked about. And I find it quite ironic that we're seeing a meme of a robot on the government side representing the government against robots. I find that quite ironic. But setting that aside, I think it's important to understand from a practical point of view that the answers are in the technology themselves, as the Honorable David Smith pointed out. I'm going to give a practical example. And as everyone knows, I like to be practical, not theoretical, such as the government. Right now, in our country, we're looking at acquiring capabilities and programs to create LiDAR. What is LiDAR? It's the 3D perception and security for smart cities that we would propose that our cities become. And both the public and private sectors are increasingly looking to capitalize on the advantages of 3D perception in the context of smart cities in the people flow monitoring space. Application developers are turning to 3D LiDAR to either replace legacy sensing technology or to create previously unachievable solutions. That creates jobs, not robots. Yes, it's used in robotic technology, but it doesn't replace humans. It creates more opportunity for humans. And if If the prime minister and his government are going to claim that you out there, who are our constituents who vote for these people, for us and them, you have to think about something. Do you consider yourself in poverty? If you are in poverty, we need to bring opportunities to you so that you get out of poverty and address that SDG, that Sustainable Development Goal. We can do that through creating a circular economy and taking the technology that, such as Tom Ross has offered. And some of that technology is quite interesting. Tom Ross is retraining people to be human. That's what he said. So what is that about? It's not to become, people are going to be displaced by robots. People are going to become more human, more involved. Jobs are not just about technology. There's art, there's medicine, there's all sorts of things that people need to be involved in. Right now, we have a pandemic around the world, and robots are not taking the place of nursing staff. Maybe they can, but they haven't, and they're not likely to do it in the future. We know in Japan that robots help elderly people, but at the same time, we know that humans are required to be a part of that process. So to simply say that robots are going to take our jobs is a false premise. Yes, robots will take some jobs away. There's no doubt about that. Just like, as was pointed out by the Honorable David Smith, that yes, we once had horses. Do you want to go back to riding horses instead of driving around in vehicles, whether they're gasoline powered or electronic vehicles? I don't think so. I think humanity is going to move forward. Our premise for this opposition is vote us into office, and you'll get a government that will create a circular economy where we can clean up the environment and create good quality jobs. We can bring technology such as I mentioned before, that's practical. We can also bring technology such as pyrolysis, which is taking waste and burning it in the absence of oxygen. It requires humans to be able to deploy that technology, run the technology, manage it, even if robotic systems are in place. Because at the end of the day, it's about jobs and for humans and retraining people to be human, as my colleague has stated, Tom Ross. So I would like to point out that what I noticed from our government leaders, and I honor the fact that they're in government and they're running the country right now, but my constituents and our constituents and the government and the country needs to think about this clearly. What do you want? Do you want this confusion between Rob, the prime minister, and his members of parliament who are all over the place, who are saying, yeah, the robots are going to take our jobs away, but robots may not. But in the long term, we're going to have science fiction opportunities like positronic brains. That's not the issue. The issue is here and now, not in the future. The issue is here. We can create good quality jobs even with robots. And we know that because it's being done around the world. The EU has adopted a circular economy. We need to do the same. Now, it's true that the EU is much larger than us. It's also true that the EU is confronting with NATO a problem with a war that's going on in the Ukraine. But the point is, jobs are still going to be created. That's the overriding tidal wave out there. The tidal wave is not robots. The tidal wave is the climate crisis. And if we address the climate crisis, we will create more jobs, more quality output, and better quality of life. And we'll be retraining people to be human, as Tom Ross talks about. And yes, we need our businesses to be profitable, but at the same time, we need quality jobs for our quality constituents and people out there. So I'd like to close on one thought here. If you're out there and you're going to vote in the next election, vote for us to be in government, because we'll not only bring a circular economy in spite of the development of robots. And yes, robots will take away some jobs, but guess what? Most of them will be replaced. Most of those jobs will be replaced. And as Rob pointed out, the Prime Minister, the training modalities are different today than they were before. He quoted the past. Well, we're not in the past. And we're not 20 years into the future for positronic brains, like his fellow minister said. No, we're in the here and now. And the here and now is we are being confronted by a grave crisis for this government and for this country. and for the people out there that need to vote for us. That crisis is the climate crisis. It's going to overwhelm everybody. The time is of the essence, and we need to act now. If you vote ourselves into government, our group into government, you'll get a circular economy. You'll get modalities to retrain people in stages and in capabilities that the government cannot provide. They can't even imagine, because they're talking about the past and they're talking about positronic brains in the future. And they're even using a robotic member for parliament. So I think it's quite ironic. I think what we need to do is we need to take a practical approach to this and address the robot issue and put it where it should be first and foremost. That robots are technology. And like any technology, it's going to create change in our society. But the change in our society is not the robots. That's not the threat. The threat and the opportunity is the climate crisis. We know we can bring technologies to bear and train people immediately in jobs where they can actually operate systems that can improve water quality, improve air quality, reduce GHG emissions that are rising in our country. We know already that anybody on this planet is breathing a minimum of 400 parts per million NOx. Is our government thinking about that? They haven't even addressed that. We're addressing it. We're saying we need to lower that. And we can do that through human capabilities, not just with robots. And the final thing is we can improve soil quality for our farmers. Our farmers, right now, everybody pointed to, one of the members of the government pointed out the United States and its agricultural issues. Let me tell you, we're not the United States. We're a different government. We can create regenerative farming, which can then blend both livestock with livestock health and also with crop health, and improve that quality of health through the process of the technologies that we can bring to bear for this government and for our people out there. And on that note, I wish everybody good success in the upcoming election. And I believe if you vote for us, you will be voting for a circular economy and for an opportunity to not be threatened by robots. And jobs will be there for you. Vote for us.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall, for your excellent speech. Yes, World Talent Economy Forums also request this kind of politicians we need in the parliament. Really, we need, because a lot of I do not want to say that they are not credible, but how they're running the political systems, it's really we are the young generation. We are worried about the system, but we are very hopeful with this kind of politician, this kind of analyst. If they contribute in the futures, it will be very helpful. Now I request for closing remarks. First, from the opposition side, Professor David Smith.
I believe you've heard today many of the opportunities which we have in our country. And you've also heard, particularly from the opposition today, many of the great accomplishments we've had as a nation and how that can work and play for our future. Even as we've looked at the questions that have been posed during part of this debate, we see there's hope with what's happening. And it's not just hope, but it's the understanding that if you look back through the generations and generations of our great citizens, we've had the ability to continue to advance in the world, to continue to move forward, to change the tools we use, to change the capabilities we have. And the opposition believes that with our leadership, you will see this growth continue to go. The opposition does agree with the majority that we need to do more with our education system. Our education system has come so far over the years that we're positioning our constituents for success. We're positioning our institutions for success and our companies for success. And the opposition believes in a very important word today in our nation. We believe that the word innovation is part of what's driving. Yes, robotics are part of innovation. Artificial intelligence is part of innovation. And The opposition party believes that with the institutions we have established within our country, that we have the ability to use lifelong learning, and that lifelong learning combined with our ability to innovate for us to be capable to adapt and actually drive our future is what will make our country great again. And with that, the opposition says, we believe that there is a future. Robotics will be part of it, and they will not force us into a second-class citizenship like the majority leader has proposed. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Opposition Leader. Now I request for the closing remarks, Minister of the Parliament, Professor Rob.
Thank you. We're facing an unprecedented level of threat. Nobody has disagreed with the statistics that are put forth either out of the United States at 47% or out of the World Economic Forum at 35% of the jobs are going to be displaced by robotics. Not a single argument against those statistics. The opposition believes in hope. They hope that the industry will fix the problems. Certainly, we haven't seen that with petrochemical industry. We haven't seen that with big pharma. We haven't seen that even with regard to electronics. They hope that AIs will be able to fix the problem. Well, we've got AIs now, machine learning AIs, deep learning AIs, and AIs that are using synthetic data. We don't have the people programming those AIs to answer the questions. You don't just wave a magic wand and an AI shows up and starts answering all your questions. You actually have to spin up the AI. You have to train the AI, and then the AI has to be put into some kind of semi-trial production and simulation to make sure that it actually does what you intend it to do. We haven't started any of that. Typically, it takes 2 to 5 years to spin up an AI of this capability. And remember, we don't even have AIs in market that can do what they're proposing it does. Right now, we're at narrow AI. What they're talking about is general purpose AI, and we're not expected to even have those available until 2035 at the earliest. So the capability won't exist until 2035, and we will still have to spin it up, train it, and make it available. They hope that you'll be able to be retrained and that you'll be able to find a job that you will enjoy. They spoke about truck drivers. You would think truck drivers would be easy. We have a massive shortage of truck drivers. You would think that the idea of automating a job that apparently nobody wants to do would get a tremendous amount of support. Yet the truck driving unions are absolutely against automating truck drivers. Why is that? Well, because the union doesn't want to go out of business. If you suddenly turn truck drivers into security guards and accountants, what's the truck driver union do? And what if the truck driver doesn't want to be an accountant or a security guard? What do you do with them then? You hope that they won't try to overthrow the government, but let's just say I'm not all that confident in that hope. They hope that a circular economy will come in and fix the problem. Boy, that was just kind of amazing. Circular economy isn't working any place right now. They cited the European Union, which has come up with an idea of how to maybe do a circular economy, but implementation was poor, and it was broadly panned because there were no teeth to the underlying bills. Nobody has to do anything. It's kind of a, hey, it would be nice if we did this. Maybe we should do this, but nobody's actually funding that it get done. And if it's not funded, it won't get done, and those jobs won't work. Certainly, the opposition hopes they're going to get elected. I am not so sure, because hope doesn't get you anything. And let's put forth another prospect. We're not in an election cycle. We are outside of an election cycle at the moment. So spending a great deal of time asking to be reelected when the election isn't for months in the future is probably a tad premature. What we are proposing is we take this problem on heads on. That we don't just sit back and hope for the best. We don't just sit back and hope industry will do what we want. We don't sit back and hope that our people will retrain. We don't sit back and hope for a better tomorrow. We actually design that better tomorrow. We go in and we identify the jobs that are at risk. We put in place programs to reposition those people and those jobs into industries that not only are going to come up, but places where they want to work, and we help them understand where it is they need to go and place them in those jobs. I mean, the opposition pointed out that there may be a robot coming to your door and taking away your job. Well, that's probably not going to happen. Nobody's going to fund robots. If anybody's been laid off in the present time, they probably got an email Probably got a call from their boss. Perhaps if the opposition actually worked in the environment from time to time, they'd understand how that process works. But in any case, the robots aren't coming in to swipe your jobs and carry you off. The fact is that robots are coming in, your jobs are going away. And if we don't do something about that, you won't have any place to go. We need to model what the jobs are and where and what the future needs to be in our country. What's our country need to look like? You know, I don't disagree that circular economy is important. I do agree we've got way too much waste and we need to do something about it. But if we don't plan and fund these programs, they won't come forward and they won't exist. So we know the jobs are going away. We don't know what the world's going to look like in the future. We have an opportunity to design that future world. And what I'm suggesting is we do that. We study the problem, we come up with a succinct solution based on that study, and then we fund the effort to make sure that workers are retrained, are able to continue, and that the future we are building for is a future we want to live in. We've all seen and certainly commented on science fiction, and we've looked at movies like The Matrix, for instance, and said, yeah, we don't want to live in that dystopian future. But how do we assure that that dystopian future doesn't exist if we don't plan for something else? It's been said that if you don't know where you're going, you certainly aren't going to get there. What we're suggesting we do is we spend the time and funding to figure out where it is we want to go and make sure we can actually get there. The government rests.
Thank you. Thank you. This is really great debate. And specifically through this process, I believe we can inspire a lot more youth community. Already we are taking responsibility of 3,200 students in India. So all of our content we will distribute to our Indian student through Rotary Club of India. So I request everyone, please share our content as much as possible with your government, corporation, and academy. And from our speakers, if you want to contribute through our School of Talent Economy, any of our classes, you can volunteer, you can share your classes with our student, because we are actually sharing this content as much as possible. Side by side, we are developing many real life projects. We are solving these human trafficking issues in Asia Pacific. We are helping some team to solve their water related problem, agricultural problem, food and safety securities issues. Waste management is another problem in Asia Pacific. So we are developing some real life projects. So we want more contribution from the speakers, from the peoples, and from different corporation and different investors. Those who want to invest this kind of projects, we want to welcome you. And I'm sure through this kind of initiative, we can change human life, and maybe we can develop better worlds. So thank you, Professor Rob, Professor David Smith, Javiers, Professor Donald, Mr. Marshalls, Tom Rose, for your excellent contribution for World Talent Economy Forum and how you do debate. This is the way to solve many problems. Even we do not need any kind of wire or any problem. Just we go for open dialogue. We go for like quality debate. We can solve many conflict. We can solve many problems. This is practically possible. So I request all of the global leaders, stop this kind of wire and problem. Do not kill people. Human lives is very important. And practice open dialogue. Practice this kind of debate. This is good for politics. It's good for human lives. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care. And I want to see all of our speakers in the real parliament. Thank you. Bye-bye and stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.